When you're ready to start painting your model, how do you know which is the best paint to use? Let's have a look at what's out there and see what the choices are. Hi, welcome back to St Blazey Model World. Right away, I'd like to start with aerosol cans. I'm going to cover these in part 3 of this series, which will look at the techniques for painting. And the reason why is that with an aerosol can, you cannot really alter the content of the product. What comes out is what's inside the can. So we'll look at those in part 3. I suppose it's fair to say that for most of us, what you're looking at now represents the traditional choice. It's a small tin of Humbrol Enamel, and they contain 14 millilitres of paint. And on the top of the can is a number, colour code number, and it at the top of the can also shows you whether or not it is a matte or a gloss finish. And just in case you're not sure, the gloss finish is a shiny one and the matte finish is not shiny, and this is a can of matte paint and it's number 109. So we'll take the top off and have a look inside, and you can see straight away on the underside of the lid just here that what we're looking at doesn't look anything like the colour of the paint indicated by the cap, and that's because these paints tend to separate and settle very easily in the bottom of the can, especially when they haven't been used for a while. So with the aid of a cocktail stick, we've given our paint 2 or 3 minutes of stirring now, and we can see inside the tin that it actually does start to resemble the colour that was on the cap. So let's have a look now and see what we've got. And straight away you can see that this paint is quite thick. That is a characteristic of enamel paints, there's nothing wrong with it. And we'll just run a small piece on this bit of test paper there. And you can see that the coverage is pretty solid. And of course that is another characteristic of the enamel based paints. So advantages, disadvantages, pros and cons. Well, it will give you a very good coverage, especially if you've properly prepared your model for painting. I covered that on part 1 of this series, and if you did miss it, there'll be a link in the top of the screen now. Enamel paints take quite a long time to dry properly, and it's best to leave any painting that you've done at least 24 hours before you start to apply any further paint to your model. Now, as I just said, these paints are quite thick in their raw state, and one of the advent of recent time is that we've been able to use thinners to thin down the paint. What will that do? Well, it will of course reduce the coverage slightly and the density of the coverage, but it does make the paint a bit more controllable on a brush, and it does encourage good painting technique, which will be covered in part 3 of this series. And if you can, it does pay to use the appropriate thinners for the make of paint that you're using. So in this case we have Humbrol thinners for our Humbrol tin of paint. Once we finish with our paint, it's important to reapply the lid properly and firmly, because these paints, particularly the enamel paints, do suffer from air getting in, and you'll find the next time you come to use it, what you'll be left with is a gloopy mess that really isn't much use. Now, in recent times I've favoured acrylic paints, and I do tend to like the Tamiya range of acrylic paints. I must stress, Tamiya have never even heard of me or my channel. All of this stuff is bought and paid for. There's certainly no free sponsorship or advertising. I just like these paints. They apply particularly well. They're available in a very wide range of colours and finishes, and I just like them. So again, with the aid of a cocktail stick, always important to stir your paint before you start using it, and let's see how it looks. Well, it runs slightly thinner than our enamel paint. Let's give it a bit of a test. Coverage, of course, is really exactly the same as the enamel paint. Perhaps not quite as dense in terms of coverage, but it depends what we're painting and how it's been prepared. But that's the finish that we hope to get. Nice bright colour, equal to the cap colour, and yeah, it's very pleasing. Now, of course, Tamiya aren't the only players in the acrylic market, and Humbrol have their own range to go alongside their enamel choices. And this one is a Humbrol acrylic. It's colour 41, and although it doesn't show up particularly well on the screen here, let's just make it a bit darker. There we go. This is a cream colour, and again it's in the same sort of size tub as their enamel range. 14 millilitres is what you get, and they react and handle very similarly to the Tamiya products. It would be wrong of me not to cover some of the specialist paint that's out there for model making. And here we have two leading players. On the right hand side we have a Phoenix Precision paint by Cherry. It's National Bus Company green. It is an enamel product, and you treat it in the same way as you would any other enamel paint. On the right hand side we've got a rail match product, and I think that's Sleeper Grime, and that's an acrylic type paint. So again, it's water based, no need for any special cleaning materials. Both of these products come from a stable of a range of different colours that allow you to accurately recreate either company liveries or things like sleeper grime, dirt, dust, grime, wear and tear, etc. And if you're entering into what I might call serious model making, for want of a better phrase, it really is worth investigating the choices that are out there, especially when you feel comfortable enough to start repainting models, either buses, vehicles, or trains, locomotives, carriages, etc. Now, thanks to the internet, the manufacturers provide wall charts, colour charts, and you can download these and print them off, or you can save them as files to your computer. And I do think they provide a handy reference source, both as to the colour of paints and the type of paints that are out there from each manufacturer in the marketplace. Now, these colour charts, as well as giving you codes, product codes, also in some cases will give you names of colours, and that helps you really to make sure you get the right choice for your particular project. So if we look at the bottom row here, the second one from the left, RAF, and that is barley grey, and we've got a paint number code to go with that. So whether you come to prefer enamel or acrylic paints, you'll find choices out there for every situation that you might need to reproduce. A recurring theme of my channel is that your models are your models, and you should treat them how you see fit, and how they end up is up to you, and just do your best to make sure that what you do end up with, particularly if you're a new model maker, is pleasing to you. It doesn't have to please anybody else. Okay, that wraps up this short video on paint and which paint we could use for our models. I do hope you found it interesting. Please remember to subscribe, and in part 3 we'll be looking at different techniques for applying paint to our models, and that'll be coming along very soon. Please stay safe, take care, bye for now.